How does a community go from being honored by kings to being labeled criminals by law? South Asia's third gender communities, historically known as hijras in India and Khwaja Siras in Pakistan, have existed for thousands of years. They have unique rituals, social roles, and a presence that continues to influence culture today, even after centuries of stigma and colonial oppression. So why does no one seem to know about them, and why aren't they as respected today? Before delving deeper, let's clarify a few terms. First, transgender. I use this term to refer to any individual whose gender identity doesn't correspond with the sex they were assigned at birth. Second, hijra. This is an umbrella term for third gender individuals in South Asia, though most commonly used in India. This can refer to eunuchs, non-binary or intersex individuals, and even what we might today call trans individuals. An important distinction, though, is not all trans people are hijras and not all hijras are trans. Lastly is Khwaja Sira. This term is similar to hijra in the sense that it's another umbrella term for third gender individuals, but it's mostly used in Pakistan. And this is just because in Pakistan the word hijra is derogatory, whereas Khwaja Sira is more respectful. Alright, to understand the history of third gender and transgender individuals in South Asia, we first need a bit of geographical context. India and Pakistan used to be one country. It's a small but important detail because when we talk about the history of Pakistan, the country itself is actually quite new. But third gender and transgender communities in this region are not. They existed long before Pakistan became independent, back when the area was part of India. So let's go way back, around 4,000 years ago. Third gender individuals did exist at that time, and in ancient India, they were and still are called hijras. Now, where did hijras come from? We don't know exactly, but the evidence shows that they've been around for thousands of years. The Kama Sutra, a text about living well and sexuality, was written sometime between 400 BCE and 200 CE, and it refers to a third sex, which scholars believe include hijras. There are also other references in Hinduism. For instance, the epic Ramayana follows the story of Lord Rama's banishment. When he was exiled, his followers were upset and tried to follow him in his banishment, but he instructed that all men and women return to the city. When he came back 14 years later, he found the hijra stayed behind, and impressed by their devotion, he granted them the power to confer blessings during important ceremonies, a tradition that continues even today. This reverence in religious texts reflects how hijras were historically respected in society. They often held positions of authority, serving as advisors, guardians, administrators. So how did such a powerful community become so stigmatized? The answer comes in the 1800s when Britain colonized India. The British sought to impose their own moral and social codes, banning practices they considered quote-unquote immoral. And in 1871, they passed the Criminal Tribes Act, which effectively labeled hijras as criminals. This law laid the foundation for much of the stigma and discrimination that continues to affect the community today. Then, in 1947, Pakistan gained independence, but the stigma around hijras persisted. Because of discrimination, they were unable to get jobs and had to rely on begging and prostitution to get by. Because of this, they became shunned by society, and any sort of interaction was seen as shameful. So Pakistan instead adopted the term Khwaja Sira for third gender individuals. Today, the word hijra in Pakistan is still considered derogatory, while Khwaja Sira carries a little more social respectability. Now, an important distinction to make is that transgender and Khwaja Sira or hijra are not the same. Hijra and Khwaja Sira communities have their own social hierarchies and religious rituals. They live in highly organized communities, often overseen by a guru, following a kinship system known as Guru Chela. In the system, a guru, teacher, mentors a chela, disciple, guiding them in the ways of the hijra or Khwaja Sira community. In some communities, bottom surgery is even seen as a bit of a religious ritual, a sacrifice to the Lord Rama. In contrast, the concept of transgender is relatively modern to both Pakistan and India, since the term wasn't widely used to describe people until the 1950s. So, not all trans people are Khwaja Siras or hijras, and not all Khwaja Siras or hijras identify as trans. Second, because the word trans is relatively modern, it somewhat escapes the colonial baggage tied to hijras. So trans people in India and Pakistan are sometimes regarded as more socially respectable. A prominent example of this is the Transgender India campaign, where trans individuals would hold up signs reading, "I am not a hijra," followed by common negative stereotypes about hijras. It's precisely because hijras are so stigmatized, portrayed as overly sexual and flamboyant, that trans people in India are regarded as socially respectable in comparison. The discourse here sort of echoes the normal case narrative in America, where certain queer identities are positioned as more acceptable to mainstream society because they appear less threatening or different. This creates a complicated social hierarchy in both India and Pakistan, where hijra and Khwaja Sira communities, as well as modern trans identities, will overlap but aren't necessarily treated the same. That's a brief overview of the history of third gender and transgender communities in Pakistan and India. On a more personal note, I personally don't identify as Khwaja Sira. I identify as a Pakistani trans man, but I do like displaying the Khwaja Sira flag in the background because I feel it represents an important part of my culture that I'm proud of, and it honors a community that has fought so that I can live more openly today. That's it for me. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and take care.